some of the clothes will also be available for sale, and they will donate back 20% to the O&M fund. The next item after that is going to be the AGM, which is in Lonavala in India. So please, if anyone's planning to be in India at that time, it's on from 2nd to 5th January 2020. So please do participate. It's going to be a very interesting program. There's also going to be a Shark Tank event like we had in Los Angeles. We're going to repeat it in Lonavala. Okay? So with that, let me go on to today's meeting. The subject, as you know, is If You Forget, Is It Alzheimer's? And Dolly Dastoor, who's come down specially from Montreal, is going to be the speaker. Dolly Dastoor has a PhD in clinical psychology, specializing in the assessment of dementia. She is Assistant Professor in Psychiatry, McGill University, and Chair of the Education Committee of the McGill University Center for Studies in Aging. I asked Dolly how she got here, and Dolly replied, I was always interested in medicine, but I could not get into medical college because I did not have the prerequisites of physics and chemistry. So I went into clinical psychology. After I got married, I went to Nigeria, where my husband was working, and was hired by the University of Ibadan as a research fellow in the World Health Organization program. We moved to Canada in 1973, and I joined the Douglas Hospital in Montreal as a research fellow in geriatrics, and was soon hired as a clinical psychologist and participated in various research projects for dementia. In the meantime, my mother in India had a stroke and developed cognitive problems due to vascular dementia. So I got even more involved in dementia work and formed the Alzheimer's Society of Montreal, also becoming Vice President of the Alzheimer's Society of Canada. One thing led to another, and one fine day, $1 million fell into our lap, which allowed us to develop the Center of Excellence for Dementia Care, a proposal I had written 10 years before then. I was named the clinical director, and this also led to the development of a tool to assess the prognosis of dementia. As if this was not sufficient, she has been involved with Zoroastrian community work since 1978. She is 4-time recycled president of the Zoroastrian Association of Quebec, secretary of Fazana, and then president from 1994 to 1998, and co-chaired the 2000 World Zoroastrian Congress in Houston. She is also editor-in-chief of Fazana Journal since 2006. Active in the Parliament of World Religions and involved with Zonta International, which promotes empowerment of status of women. Dolly, not sure where you get the time to do all this, but she also enjoys reading, attending concerts, and stage performances. Her family is scattered all over the globe. Eldest son teaches at the University of Maine. Second son is in Singapore as Managing Director, Greater Asia of UL. And her daughter is a pediatrician in Houston. Her talk today is, as I mentioned earlier, is If You Forget, Is It Alzheimer's? I hope not, Dolly. Friends, may I present to you the amazing Dolly Dastoor.
Whilst Arizan is setting it up, I want to thank you very much, especially Adel, for inviting me here, because it's really a privilege to talk to our community itself. Because most of you who are here are either feeling that you have some memory problems, or you're worried that you're having some memory problems, or you have somebody in your family who has been suffering from memory problems. And thank you. And memory is an extremely important aspect of our life, because memory gives you the meaning of, you remember the past, you have the present, and you can plan the future because you depend on your memory. Memory gives you the meaning, memory resides in in your brain. I mean, you can feel everything else in your body, but the brain is in your skull and you can't see the brain. And you don't know what you see the brain of our beja when we do the beja na cutlass. Apart from that, we have never seen the brain. So memory is something which we're all very worried about. This is a generation where we are living much longer. We've been living longer, much longer than our parents did. Every decade, we add 10 years to our life. And as we get older, everybody wants to age well. But there's a specter of memory loss in our mind. That as we grow older, we say, oh, okay, we can't remember things. I forget, I'm very old. But that's not true. Aging is inevitable. Everybody ages. You age from day one. You're 1 day old. You're 1 month old. You're 1 year old. You're 10 years old. But memory loss is not something which is to be accompanied by aging. So what we're going to talk about today is to see what is normal aging, since we all forget. What is normal aging, and how do we preserve our memory? How do we enhance our memory? And what is not normal aging? When should we start getting worried that something is not working well? Okay? So that's how we're going to. Okay. So what is memory? How does it function? Memory in normal aging, the processes, how do we preserve our memory, what is happening. Then if we have enough time, we go to what is abnormal aging and what are the warning signs of a decreased memory, okay? And we go to the dementia, which is what everybody is very worried about. So the first question which we ask ourselves is, what is memory? Memory is not just one thing which stays somewhere in your brain. No? Memory is different things, different parts of your brain organize different parts of your memory. You know? So what we have, what we call memory is a dance of chemical and electrical activity in the brain. The brain has about 100 trillion neurons and connections which are there all the time, and they talk to each other. Now, how do they talk to each other? They talk to each other through electrical activities or chemical activities. And once we are young and when we are energetic, they talk quite easily and fast. But as we grow older, the speed of the connections lessens. But that is the way the memories are formed. When you repeat things again and again, the connections get stronger and stronger. So there are different types of memory. You have what we call explicit memory, where you have to make an extra effort to remember something. You can't, something happens and you want to remember that, you have to make an effort. And you have to repeat that a little time. So that is continuously, consciously remember an action. And that action can be either in episodes, or but declines with age because we don't encode it very well. And there is what we call semantic memory. And semantic memory is memory for words, for events, for geographical places. You don't have to make an extra effort to remember that. It comes naturally. And once you remember it, it's there. And that also does not decline with age. Opposed to that, what we have implicit memory, which is like procedural memory. When you learn how to bicycle, when you learn how to drive your car, when you brush your teeth, those are all procedural memories which are there. You don't have to sit down and think, how am I going to drive the car? Do I turn the key, or what do? I press the pedal? It comes automatically. Those are automatic actions. And those are procedural memories which last for a long time. Even people who have dementia will be able to drive their car for a long time. So the person sitting next to them may be scared, but they're still able to drive the car, but it's automatic. So how do we form them? As I said, the connections between the cells become stronger and stronger as we repeat the things. Again, the memories, as I said, just not one thing, there's sensory memory. When I'm talking to you, goes through your ears, and you can see me, and that sensory, different senses work together to form an image. That is, there's no loss with age. As you grow older, this stays with you. Then, when you see what I'm talking to you, and you want to remember this a little longer, you have to start keeping it in your working memory. Working memory is something which is very short. I mean, now with our cell phones and our smartphones, we don't have to remember the telephone numbers, they're all in your smartphone. But before, when we used to have a directory, when we had to phone people, we used to remember 7 digits, then it became 10 digits. And those is working memory. We remember that and we have to keep it for a short time and it disappears. You don't keep remembering the number forever and ever. And that is a minimal loss with age. And then, if you want to have a primary memory, if you want to keep it for a longer time, if you want to go home and still remember what I had said today, you have to put this memory into your secondary memory. So you have a sensory memory, you have primary memory, and then you have your secondary memory. Now secondary memory is something which does not decline with age, and it's long-term memory. And you remember things of the past much better than what just happened this morning. Sometimes you forget what you have for breakfast, or what are you going to wear today, or what you wore today. You forget that. No? Whereas you ask who was your teacher's name in first grade, you may remember that. So the long-term memory is something that stays with you for a much longer time, and that does not decline too much with aging. So you have to remember that some things do decline and some things don't decline. So you can't say a blanket statement that as I'm getting older, my memory stops working very well. Because memory is something which you have so much importance to. You know, there were people who used to remember things, learn things by memory, learn things by rote, and remember even saying it backwards very high. So, and there's some people who can't. So it depends a lot on how you encode it. The memory which you take in is how you register something, how much attention you're paying to something, how much it comes into your memory, how you process it in your mind, and then how you bring it back again. If you recall it, or can you repeat it, it depends on all that. So there's the different methods. So this is just a simple model. Working memory, immediate recall, and delayed recall. How much longer? The working memory, immediate memory, short-term memory, whereas the delayed recall comes out of your long-term memory. Okay, so there are different types of memory which you have to remember. So why does your memory decline with age? There are some people who are in their 90s and they have fantastic memories. They can remember things, they can write they can write presentations, they can give presentations, do all sorts of things. But there are some people even in their 50s can't remember very well. Why is that? What happens? Is it genetic? Is it environmental? What happens? So that we have to think about it. Because as we age, there are areas in the brain which are vital to memory. The most important area is called hippocampus, and I give you a picture. You see this little blue thing over here? That's the hippocampus. What I'm saying goes into your hippocampus and it stays there, and it processes there, and then it sends out to different parts of your brain. Now, that hippocampus is very essential for your short-term memory, where your memories are processed in there. And then it sends to different parts. As we grow older, the hippocampus shrinks. It becomes a bit smaller, and you need a good size volume of the hippocampus to bring in the memory and keep those memories. The other part of your brain which is important for processing your memory is your frontal lobes, your lobes in front over here. So the images of the memories go in there, they're processed and they're stored there. And we want to recall it, you pull it out from there. So there are a couple of areas in the brain which are important. First the hippocampus, then the frontal lobes. The other thing which is very important is what we call the amygdala. Now this amygdala, you don't have to know that, you have to know what happens. That amygdala is very close to the hippocampus. So whenever you have an emotion, or whenever you are very stressed out, when you're stressed out, there's a special hormone in your body called the cortisol, which works in the hippocampus and which causes the hippocampus to shrink. And because of that amygdala and the hippocampus work very close to each other, and then you cannot remember things. Now we all know that when we were in school, or when we were doing an exam, or we were going for an interview, you were so stressed out that you don't remember to answer something. And then you would come out of that and say, oh my God, that was the answer? It was so simple, and I just could not remember that. So that's because when your stress level comes down, your hippocampus and your amygdala works again. The same thing happens when you are looking after somebody who's chronically ill, or somebody who's intellectually challenged. You're so stressed out, and the stress level is continuous for months even, or years even, and then you can't function very well, because your memory is not working very well, you can't think very well, you can't make good judgments very well, because your hippocampus and amygdala are not coordinating with each other. Follow? You can stop me whenever you want. And the other thing which is more important in our memory process is the thalamus. There's also a gland which controls your attention. When we were younger, when we had babies, when we had little children, if they cried, we would jump up and go because our attention was alert. You're always on alert to think what's happening. Now, if your grandchild is crying in the next room, you're not going to jump up and go. So that's their parents' job. You know? But that's how our attention, we have to pay attention to something. If you don't pay attention to something, you're not going to remember that. So the activity in the hippocampus and the frontal lobe slows down with age due to loss of connections, because the synapses are not working very well to each other between the nerve cells. That still does not mean that you're not going to remember things. You will remember things. You have what you call, you meet somebody on the road, and I heard many people talking here that they say, oh, I know this person's name, and I'm also here. I met many of you, I know you, but I can't get your name. So and then you walk away and say, oh my God, that's the name, I do remember that. So you have what you call the tip of the tongue phenomenon. It's on your tongue, you want to say it, but it doesn't come out. You may be stressed out, you may be fatigued, you may be on some medications, you may be upset, you may be depressed. All those things causes your memory not to function well. Okay. So this is your frontal lobe, you can see. It's just a little diagram for you to see, as I showed that to you. Okay, so now how do we preserve our memory? First of all, it's very important to have a good lifestyle. And in the good lifestyle, you have to have good cognitive activities, you have to have a positive attitude, and we have to have a use of efficient strategies. How do we develop good memories? It's a lifestyle. The most important thing I would like to say is exercise. Exercise. You know, it's very important to keep being physically fit. So do exercise. We do a lot of mental, physical exercise. We go to Nautilus, we go to different classes, we do gym classes. But we don't do enough to keep the mind active going. We do this physical exercises, but the mind has to be active too. The brain is a muscle, just like any other muscle. And if the muscle is not active enough, the muscle is not working. The muscle is not irrigated well enough with good supply of blood, it's not going to work well. So you have to keep your brain going. 30 minutes a day, 3 times a week is not bad, it's good. Also, we would recommend that when you have exercise, you should walk with somebody or do something else, so that whilst you're exercising, there is an interaction. You're walking, you're doing social activities, you're doing things. You're not just walking. Sometimes you walk with your earphones and you hear the music or you hear the news. That's okay, but your mind has to be working. Also, you can't just go and do a lot of exercise and then come back and sit on the sofa and have your chips or whatever and not do anything else. It has to be all in combination. Diet. Diet is also important. What are you eating? What you're putting into your body? Because the fuel that goes into your body is how your brain is going to work. The fuel is very important. So the pro-memory diet is something which is low in saturated fat, high in fruits and protein and vegetables, vitamin B12, folate. Folate is in spinach, citrus fruits, asparagus, beans. I mean, we Parsis eat a lot of beans. We like our chora and our masoor and the charani dal, and all that is very good for us because that's high in proteins, and that is good for you. And that protects the brain. Another very important thing is sleep. We, they say, are a very sleep-deprived generation. We are not sleeping as much as we should. And we all think that, okay, we'll make up our sleep on the weekend. We don't have to sleep every day. I mean, I know Adel and I can correspond at about 2 o'clock at night. And that's not good, I know. But I mean, that's me. But I do try to make up little dates. Sleep is very important because what happens when you sleep, you're not only regenerating your body, but you're also regenerating your brain. The brain gets tired, there's all sorts of compromises, these things, and so it needs to rest. It needs to rejuvenate itself. It needs to repair itself. So the brain, when you're sleeping, repairs itself. This is what happens when somebody goes into a coma. They put them, or has a brain accident, they put them in a sleep-induced coma. And so that the brain regroups itself. Sleep is so important, you know, that they say that you can go without food for, say, 2 weeks. You can go on a starvation diet for 2 weeks, but you can't go without sleep for that time. You may die within 10 days if you haven't slept at all. Because sleep is very important for you. That is why pilots don't fly for very long distance. They have two groups of pilots. In the residences, as residents, the medical students also cannot work throughout. They have a certain time limit. So sleep is important and plays really important. And I think our children don't pay much attention to having good, proper sleep. And that's very important. And I spoke to about stress. Cortisol, stress hormone, shrinks the hippocampus, and the chronic stress alters the brain. So you have to, I'm not saying that you shouldn't have stress. Everybody has stress in their lives. There's nobody who has no stress. But how we manage the stress is important. How you de-stress and de-stress. That's important. I'm going to talk a little later about how to manage stress. And the last thing is how to preserve your memory is to have social and leisure activities. Get involved in things by having this beautiful Darbe Mare and coming here to do things and interacting and with children without just the parents. That's extremely important because you're interacting. When they say people who interact, doing volunteer work, they're doing in soup kitchens or whatever they're doing, they live longer and they're much more happier persons. Happy people are not necessarily those who have lots of money, but those are people who give of themselves and you work with other people. That is the essence of having a good mental health. The other part, second part of preserving memory is your lifestyle. Maintain your health. Keep your body weight in check. Monitor your diabetes because diabetes is supposed to be a fourth cause for dementia as well. Because when you're with diabetes, if you're not controlling it, your brain it gets irritated well enough, and you can have problems with your brain supply. So diabetes, control your hypertension. Because I was reading that hypertension, diabetes, and dementia, they all form on the same on the same chromosomes. And so all of them are interconnected. Diabetes may cause hypertension, both together may cause aging, premature aging as well. And control osteoporosis. So that's important too, because to maintain your bone strength, to keep your balance well, is necessary. Because as we grow older, if you're falling down and you fall often, it's not that old people should not be falling, but once you fall and you break your hip or you break something, it's very difficult to get back your quality of life. You can have a surgery, you can have a repair work done, but your quality of life does not come back. You may not be able to walk as well as you before, or you may not be able to do things as well as before. Then cognitive activities solve brain teasers. That means keep your brain active by doing one new activity here. Learn to play the piano or learn to play card games or do some other things, but something new so that you activate different parts of your brain. And those activities should be active activities, not passive activities. Okay. Again, use of efficient strategies, which means that when somebody introduces themselves to you or do something, try to remember that person's name, repeat that person's name again and again so that you encode it very well. Many people have that talent for doing that. I don't, but you should do that. And also, what you see, you can remember much better than what you can hear. Before, when we didn't have the PowerPoints, people would just stand and give a talk, and you wouldn't be able to remember that because our attention span is not long enough to absorb everything they said. So now that you see, you can remember things which is a visual things much better than auditory. Okay? You have to do something and when you learn something, attach it to something different, to something which you already know. And we have what we have outsourced our memory. We have our agendas, we have cues, we have filing systems, we write things down. And those things are important also. When we go shopping, we carry a list with it. Before, we used to remember everything in our heads. People used to remember things much longer. We used to work our memory much more. All of us over here, we used to know our times tables. We used to know 2 times or even half times tables. People used to know. Does any of your grandchildren know that? Nobody knows their times tables now. So that is something else which people don't learn. By exercising these things, our brains function much better. Okay, so what are the top 10 warning signs of decreased memory? When should you be scared of? I've told you all these things are quite common. If you have slight changes of memory, only 10% of people who have little problems with memory will develop into dementia. Everybody doesn't. So when should we be frightened? The first warning sign, when you have little memory lapses which affect your daily life. Some things you do something and you forget, and you keep asking the same question again, and then you go back and see, what is it? Keep checking on things. Mild offense. The second one is difficulty in performing familiar tasks. Something which you do every day, you sometimes forget how to do it, what's happening to it. So that's the second part. Now, all these 10 things which I'm going to give you, they don't happen at once to everybody. This is not the sequence that naturally follows, and these are the 10 signs which we should be careful about. There's problems with language. You can't find the right word at the right time. Ask somebody, what is this? And instead of saying it's the clock or watch, they may say, oh, it's something to keep the time with, you count your time. You know, they give you a description of the thing rather than give you the word itself. So that's the difficulty with finding the right word at the right time. And the language is not only speech, language is writing, and language is reading. Sometimes when people with dementia or beginning of dementia can read that line, instead of going to the next line, go back to the same line and keep reading again. And you see somebody sitting with the paper and reading it for about more than half an hour, the same page. And you wonder what's happening. They haven't gone through the whole page, they're still on the same line. So then writing. We all write with cursory line. We have a running hand. As dementia progresses or as these problems become, we start beginning to print. And in the end, what happens is, you can't even write, you scribble. You lose the ability to write. So I want to tell you, I will tell you a little later, but I can tell you right now, that when we have developed the problem with symptoms of dementia, they are in the opposite direction of the growth of a child. When a child is born, they don't have language. They just make a sound. They have no movement. They begin to have language. You know, they begin to say mama, they begin to say a word, they begin to make two words, they make a sentence, and then the development goes on. What happens in dementia? It goes in the reverse direction. What you were able to read and write, that deteriorates and deteriorates and deteriorates, until in the end, the person is not able to make a sentence, is not able to write, is not able to read. So it's in the opposite direction. Disorientation of time and space. We all know what date is today. Sometimes when you're retired, we don't know, but we have the calendar. But with people who are beginning to have really memory problems, they forget what the date is, what the time is, and they mix that up. You know. They don't know where they are. The place gets mixed up. And they sometimes leave the house and walk around, and they cannot find their way back because they have lost the sense of direction. They don't know where they've gone. The other is poor or decreased judgment. They may wear winter clothes in summer and go out, or wear summer clothes in winter and go out. And so their judgment is not there. This is very important when the people are in business and when this dementia is not fully known, they may make wrong decisions. They make wrong decisions, financial decisions, to selling their shares or whatnot. So the decrease in poor judgment is another flashing point that what is happening to the people. Problems with abstract thinking. When you do write a checkbook, or when you're thinking of what you want to do today, what you're going to do now after you leave here, you don't have to have the object in front of you. You can think about it in your mind. But with people beginning to have memory problems, you need that object in front of you to be able to think. You need the checkbook in front of you to be able to write the check. Otherwise you can't do it. So that's the abstract thinking. Misplacing things. We all misplace things. We put our keys somewhere, we put our glasses somewhere, we park our car somewhere, we can't find it. So that is quite common. But we find it back again. They say, and that's not a joke, it's a real thing, that we spend at least a month, a year, looking for our objects. So it takes a long time to find the thing, and we lose a lot of time. But misplacing objects is fine. But when it happens again and again and again, and you can't find the object, it takes at least more than a week to find the object, then you have to start worrying, and the family has to start worrying, what is happening? Changes in mood and behavior. We always think that dementia is something that happens with the memory. It's a memory problem. But it's not only the memory problem, it's also a behavior problem. People with dementia, as the dementia progresses, start becoming agitated, they become aggressive, they become angry, they unnecessarily hit people, and the difficulty becomes more physical. There's more physical aggression. Physical manifestation of dementia rather than just mental, So that becomes difficult. As when people become more and more physically difficult to manage, then people think of placements. Till then you can manage them at home. But when people become, you cannot manage somebody at home, you cannot then become sleepless, just open the door and want to go out. So the caregiver also is awake the most of the night, being careful what's happening, then there's a burnout. There's a changes in personality. Somebody who was very quiet and mild, not aggressive, uses swear words and says things which is so uncommon to their personality that you start wondering what the hell is happening, And that is, the brain doesn't work as well as it should. The hippocampus, the amygdala, all the parts of the brain which control memory and control your emotions are not working. Got that. Okay. So now we talk about, are we okay? So when we talk about abnormal aging, and I think everybody here is interested in knowing what is Alzheimer's disease. First I want to give you an example to clarify that Alzheimer's is one type of dementia. Dementia is a global term which has over about 60 to 65 different types of dementia. But the most common feature of all that is memory problems. So dementia is a syndrome. It's like fever. You can have fever for many different things. So dementia is a problem where there's a real structural change in the brain taking place. There's plaques there, the nerve cells die, there are different things taking place. It's not an aging cause. Age is one factor. Maybe as you live longer, you may be more likely to cause it, but aging is not the main cause for dementia. What is the cause? Is a group of syndromes resulting from a structural loss. There's a change or death of nerve cells in the brain. It's a real disease. It starts very insidiously, very gradually. Nobody can pick it up. You ask them, they come to the clinic and you ask, when did it start? They say, I really don't know. But they kept asking us the same questions every time. We went for Sunday lunch and they would give the same dinners every time, So it's very gradually, and there's a progressive decline. It slowly goes down. It's not like from one day to the next. It slowly goes down. Sometimes it may take 10 years to be manifested. Sometimes it goes way faster. And it destroys your cognition, it destroys your function, and it destroys your behavior. All three things have to be combined. It's just not just one. And only less than 10% of people who experience memory lapses develop dementia later on. So just because you have a few memory problems here and there, you can't remember somebody's name, that doesn't mean you're going to get Alzheimer's disease. So please put that out of your mind. And even before the symptoms start, the changes in the brain has been already taking place. So it's very difficult to really pinpoint when it started. And in order to be able to do something or give any medication, there has to be something left in the brain for the medication to take effect. If you wait too long, it's too late. And the things which affect the first in dementia are learning and memory. You begin to not be able to learn new things very fast. You can slow down in learning and thinking and planning. Now, another way to see it is that as a child is born, before even the child is born, when cells in the womb, when the cells are being grown, the cells go to the inner part of the brain. Then it goes to the central part, and then it goes to the frontal part. And this frontal part, which we say, are the ones which control your planning, your decision making, your judgment. All those higher processes are maintained by the front. So in dementia, it is in the reverse thing, and the ones which the higher processes are lost. The people cannot make good decisions, they cannot make good judgment, there's no control, and so all that things changes. So thinking and planning goes, and learning and memory is the first things to go. What are the symptoms? Memory impairment, main thing. The other things is language, as we said. Language is not an executive function, decision making, not that. Apraxia is doing things with your hands and things like buttoning yourself, tying your shoelaces, brushing your teeth. Everything which you can do with your hands is not there. You lose the ability slowly. Then agnosia. Agnosia is also manipulating things. That ability is gone. And these are all functional losses. Not only the memory, but functional losses are lost. Whilst all this is going on, the person is quite conscious. There's no loss of consciousness. They don't look confused, and there's no depression. So the consciousness is clear, but the cognition is not there. Now this dementia business is getting worse and worse globally. In 2000, there were about 20 million people. By 2050, which is not that far away, there'll be 131.5 million people. So what the hell are we going to do with all these people with dementia? We have to think of something and to do what. Gabe, you don't believe that? Okay, so out of which it affects women much more. And so women have to be much more careful. 61% of all dementia people are women, and about 39% are men. So maybe that's men are not very anxious to build nursing homes for people. I don't know. Okay, so I told you Alzheimer's is just one type of dementia. There are about 60 different types of dementia, but the Alzheimer's disease is the most prominent. You read about it, you hear about it, you have movies about it, you have articles about it every day or every week. You see different visuals. So everybody is very obsessed with that idea, But there's also what we call vascular dementia, where it's because of your blood circulation, not because of after stroke or after major depression also, but mainly after a stroke. High cholesterol levels, when the brain is not being irrigated well enough and the blood supply is not there, you have vascular dementia. Sometimes the vascular and Alzheimer's can be mixed. You also have what we call frontotemporal dementia, where it affects cells over here as well as in the temporal region. So in the front, when it affects, you lose your ability to control yourself. I'm sure many of you over here would like to stand up and go home, but when you're thinking of something else to do, and you don't do that because you think it's not allowed, you're not supposed to do that. But with people with having frontal dementia, all that is gone to the wind. They do exactly what they want. They will not be any careful to follow rules and regulations. And the temporal means that they cannot really think very well. Alcoholic dementia was also very common once upon a time. But now people are drinking much less. And because of that, alcohol dementia is in much lower. What happens is our body, as we grow older, has more fat content and less water content. Okay? And alcohol is water soluble. So when you drink alcohol, sometimes you feel very thirsty and you want to drink a lot of water because there's more alcohol content in your body. And alcohol affects your hippocampus and that affects your memory. When people have a lot to drink, they talk nonsense and they do not really know what they're talking about because their brain is not functioning very well. And so, as we grow older, what we see, we could make 2 glasses of wine or whatever we used to drink once we were younger. That is, even 1 glass will be enough as we grow older because as water is less. And, which is the good news, is that red wine is advisable to drink, at least 1 glass a day, not white wine. Because the red wine is an antioxidant. That means that the skin of the grapes, when they make the red wine, they crush it with the skin itself, and that has the antioxidants there. The white wine doesn't have that. But now don't go home and drink a whole bottle of red wine. But red wine is good. Yesterday we were drinking white wine, now start drinking red wine.
What about scotch?
Yeah, but I'm talking of wine. Scotch. Alcohol as a rule is not good. As we grow older, we should decrease the amount of alcohol we consume.
How about brown whiskey?
I'm sorry?
Brown whiskey.
Yeah.
Just kidding.
Yes, but the most common between Alzheimer's disease, vascular, frontotemporal, alcoholic, and Lewy body, I didn't talk about Lewy body. Everybody has a common thing is memory. And there are different manifestations of that. In alcoholic dementia, what happens is that you forget something which happened immediately. You go and speak to them, and you turn around and go back, and they forget. They just don't know what happened. Whereas in other dementias, in frontotemporal, the memory is not so severely affected. In Alzheimer's disease also is affected, and I have to, when you have people with dementia, you keep asking them, do you remember this, or what happened then? And they don't ask them because they cannot answer that, they don't remember that. And this is a real story. I was at a funeral and the lady asked the man, she came after a long time and he was having dementia, and she said, so the guy said, if you can't remember your own name, why should I give you one? Because it was so classic, you know. Okay, as I said, the World Alzheimer Report says that there are 50 million people globally. 8.9 million are going to be in East Asia, out of which India has a large proportion of it. And by 2050, half the people living with dementia will be in Asia. So if our families and things are living in India, that's Asia, so it's something to think about now. And we all know 32% of us know somebody with Alzheimer's disease. And 21% have someone with Alzheimer's disease in the family. And women account for over 2/3 of those over 55 with the disease. And that's scary. And either because we live longer, because we're genetically different, or whatever. And the cost of looking after people in home is phenomenal. And it's growing rapidly as the numbers increase. In 2010, and I'm giving you US figures, there was $6.4 billion spent in care for them. This is going to jump by 2021 to $1 trillion. Now this includes professional cares in the nursing homes by the government sponsor, as well as in home caregiving. What people lose in salaries, people give up their jobs to go and look after their people at home. So all that is counted together, and there's a lot of money and there's a lot of people. And we have to think outside the box as to what are we going to do with all of us living so much longer. And if we keep living longer and longer, there's every possibility that more and more of us will get memory problems. And the rising global cost of dementia will pose a serious challenge to healthcare and social care systems around the world. And if their governments are cutting in social care, they're cutting in nursing homes, they're cutting all sorts of things, what are we going to do? The burden will fall on the lay people, the burden will fall on the NGOs, the burden will fall on family caregivers. People generally think, and people in India also think, that, oh, we have the extended family system and they will look after them, you have all. That's not true. There's no more extended family system, or the extended family is shrinking. There's not that many people. Everybody's working. And who will look after them? Either the daughter-in-law, or somebody who has to give up their job and to be there with them. Because as the dementia progresses, you can't leave them alone in the house. They may do things which are not appropriate. We know a family who used to take the knives every day from the kitchen and hide them. Because we never knew what the person would do with those knives and hit somebody or kill somebody or hit themselves, whatever, because they have no control over themselves. Okay, and the treatment costs also increases, the monetary cost in the US. In 2018, it was 290 billion. 2050 is going to be 2 trillion. This is an estimated cost. So everything is escalating, and the government is not putting in enough money for research into dementia. There's more and more money put into cancer research, but not enough put into dementia research. The family caregivers, unpaid hours of care, 11.5 million hours in 2011. And this is cumulative. And 2050 is going to jump up to 38.4 million hours of unpaid care. And that's a huge amount of money, huge amount of sacrifice the family has to do. And the total value of unpaid care for everything is 14.5 billion. I mean, I don't even know how many zeros are this in 14.5 billion on the trillion. Okay, who gives the care? The spouses. 46% are the spouses, and the average age of the spouse itself is about 74. So they themselves are getting older. So that is important to understand. Second most is the adult child gives. Adult child, and the average age of the adult child is also 54. Now these are the adult children now in the standard generation. They're also looking after their own children, their grandchildren, they're looking after the parents, and so they don't know whether to go and look after the parents or go after the children. So this is the storm between two sides. But they're doing it, and most of this falls on the daughter. And the daughters are, about 71% of the caregivers are daughters. All those of you who are daughters here, think about it. And it's also supplied by the women. Okay. So now I want to talk, and do you have some young women of time? We have to talk about the different stages of dementia. When we say that somebody has got Alzheimer's disease, it's not just one blanket thing that one day you say this, you get a diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease and that's it. Sometimes it's like a death sentence. If the doctor doesn't explain to you practically what's going to happen, what are the stages, what's going to happen from one stage to the other, you're at a loss. You don't know what's happening. So, very mild stage will last for about 2 to 10 years. And that depends on how much social support the person has, how many things you're doing with the person. What the symptoms are, you forget small things. They're forgetful of recent events. Nothing major. The still person can live in the house. They have difficulty with complex things. They forget how to do complex things, whatever. But the more important thing at that time is they become suspicious. They lose things, they put things somewhere and they feel somebody's stolen it. And there's mostly people who are close to them, people who are living in the house. They may think that my son stole my money, or my daughter stole, or my servant who was there, I'm sure she stole the money, So they become very suspicious. I mean, in an extreme case, they become suspicious, and because they don't recognize the faces of people also. I mean, this is a little in the moderate stage. I had a patient, she was only about 50 or 55, but she had it in an advanced stage, because what we have in early onset dementia, people who are in the younger age, not necessarily in the older age. There are a few families in the world, very few families, a smaller percentage, who have hereditary genetic component in dementia. Okay? So this particular, she was from Scotland, and she had 9 children, 9 siblings in the family, and everybody from the top to her, she was the 5th one, had dementia. And the people after her were worried that she would have it. She was in an advanced stage in dementia. And they had to cover up all the mirrors in their house, because she would look at herself in the mirror and think it was somebody else. And And she would think that her husband was having an affair with this woman. And this woman was in her house and was trying to get to her husband. So this happens, and this is very difficult to manage. And so the caregivers need a lot of support and they need a lot of help to do these things. So that is in mild stages. In mild stage can have 2 to 10 years. The moderate stage, what happens is they have difficulty in cooking. Even if they have the recipe in front of them, they may have to come to Jagge's class, I don't know. They have the recipe in front of them, they are not able to cook. They're not able to follow the recipe. They're not able to handle the money. They make mistakes. You go to sometimes the wife or the husband will say, okay, why don't you go and buy something in the grocery store? And they give back the change is not accurate. Either the guy didn't give the change back properly, or they mistook it or did something else with it. They cannot handle the money. They're unable to maintain the home. If you go to persons with having dementia, the main thing is that the home is quite disorganized. I do know there were a couple of good movies of an actress, not actress, which was an author, who had dementia in their life. This movie was made of her. And her house, if you will see, was full, littered with books and magazines and things, and nothing was arranged, nothing was... So they now say that if you want to know if somebody has dementia or not, see how their home is. How they have to... Sometimes I go and run into my house and clean something, making sure nobody comes to visit my house. But a clean house, you see the clothes on the ground, or you see things somewhere else, so they cannot manage, they cannot organize themselves. Difficulty taking medication, that's another thing. We have these pill boxes, we put the medication for each day, different types of medication, but sometimes they forget, did I take it or did I not take it? Or, that happens very often. I'm sure many of you have the same experience. There's very little recall of recent events, you don't remember. And then at this stage, behavior problems started. People start becoming agitated and they start becoming aggressive. They start hitting out, they start refusing to do things, And so the level of care which you have to give to the person who has dementia in your house is different. In mild stages, what happens is more emotional. They keep repeating the same thing, so it's embarrassing. If you have your friends coming in and they keep asking the same question, you begin to think that, oh mother, stop that, they've already asked me that question. But in the second stage, in the middle to the severe stage, it's more physical. You have to take them to the bathroom. You have to ask them to say, come and have your shower, or come and have your bath, and they resist, they don't want to do it. So you may have to physically bring them or pull them up from the chair to be able to do things. So that is a different way of giving. So the care which you have to give at different stages is very different. It's not the same throughout the disease. So in the severe stage, what happens is the person has great difficulty in dressing themselves, they have to do washing themselves, so you have to do all these things for them. They have difficulty swallowing, sometimes they get choked with that, so you have to have mashed up food to give them, very soft food. They begin to have fecal incontinence. First is fecal incontinence, then they have urinary incontinence. Now, as I was telling you, as the development of the child takes place, first the child begins to have control over first the child begins to have control over the feces, then the urine, and then the dementia is the opposite. They have gait disturbances. They're not able to walk properly. They may walk with a very shuffling gait, and they don't have balance, they keep falling. They have more hallucinations and delusions. They see an object and they think that something else there and not what it really is, And they think delusion, oh no, somebody was in the house, I saw that person. And so the mother, there's nobody here, Says, no, and there's no use arguing because they will not be convinced of what you're telling them. Poor recognition of family. They cannot recognize their own children. They recognize their siblings and their parents a bit more than they recognize their own siblings, own children, or even their spouses. They don't remember that. And worse is, I'm laughing, but it's not a joking matter. They remember the names. If you have a second spouse, they'll remember the name of the first spouse more than they remember the name of the second spouse. And this causes a lot of conflict in the family. Little recall of past life. very restricted vocabulary, the speech is not there, they cannot make a complete sentence, and there are neurological abnormalities. All the reflexes which you have as a child, the sucking reflex, the child will always put things in their mouth. As the person becomes more and more demented, they put everything in their mouth. And so it's difficult. Or they will suck things, you know. So all those reflexes, which they were there as children, come back. So you see this brain on the left side, left side, that's an intact, healthy brain. On the right side, the brain is being eaten away. You have less and less neurocells. So you see how the brain shrinks. You can see this in the face of the man. I don't know how, can you see everything? The healthy brain is on the top and then it's shrunken. So what are very soon we should finish, the risk factors and age. As we grow older, it's more and more, but as I said again, it's not necessarily that everybody who is old will get dementia. That's not true. You have people, I've seen people in their 90s giving a brilliant piano performance, and I see people in their 50s who cannot do anything. So, and then genetic factors are also important. There is at least 25% of dementia cases are genetic. It's because it runs in the family. Especially when you have your parents and your grandparents having it, the chances are having more. And people ask me, is there anything what we call genetic testing? Yes, there is genetic testing, but we don't recommend it because there's nothing you can do when you know that you have dementia. There's nothing, no medication to take it so that it will stop dementia. You can slow it down a little bit, but you will get it. So the best thing is to live your life as best as you can, and fully as you can, because there's no cure for it at the moment. And the environment, as we mentioned, the environment, exercise, health, lifestyle, all those things have to be done as a good environment. Age, in normal aging, after age 30, we lose about 40 to 80% of brain cells every 10 years. But as I said, there are trillions of brain cells, it doesn't matter what you lose a little bit here and there. But as we grow older, we get more and more brain cells are dying. So by the age of 100, about 80% of our brain cells die. Now I put there 150, age 150, I know none of us are going to live to 150, but there's a lot of research been going on where we want to prolong life longer and longer. And so there may be a possibility our children, our grandchildren may live much longer than what we live. We are living longer than what our parents live. So every generation we are living longer. So the brain cells are lost. 60 to 80% of brain cells are lost by the time the Alzheimer's disease is diagnosed. So it's a serious thing. And what are the genetic factors? The chromosome 1, less than 1%. If there is a mutation on chromosome 1, less than 1% of chances, okay. 14, less than 4% of chance, and that is where the familial disease, dementia, comes in. If you have mutation on the chromosome 14, and this is a family trait. And the age of onset is early. When you have that, people who are younger get it much faster. My first patient was about 40 years old. And by the time she was diagnosed, she must have had symptoms before that as well. Then chromosome 19, if there's a mutation, which is more common with boxers, when they have concussions in the brain and they have hitting on the brain. That is why we have to be very careful with our grandchildren and children that they wear the helmets and they protect the brain. Because the brain is so fragile. It's not fragile, it's very powerful, but you have to protect it. And it is like, you've seen our brain, you've seen the brain of a sheep, it is like jello. It's about 3 pounds and it sort of moves in the brain, moves in the skull. So we need to protect it. The more you protect it, the better it will perform for you. Okay? And people with Down syndrome, if they live up to the age of 60, 100% will get dementia. Because that's a very strong connection with the chromosomes. Environment. What are the environment risk factors? Education. Lower levels of education. Because people with low levels of education have lower socio-economic status. Now that doesn't mean that people who have low education are going to get dementia. I've had people who were CEOs of big companies, CEOs, hospitals, and I've had people who had no education at all. It doesn't mean that, but what happens is when you have higher levels of education, you have more strategies to manage your memory loss. You have a secretary with you who covers up for you, you have a spouse for you who covers up with little things. So there is a different, different strategies. Hormones, I've gotten, head trauma, as I just mentioned, you have to protect your brain. Hypertension, because hypertension protects us and causes more circulation problems, and that affects your hippocampus. And Down syndrome, they mentioned that. So as I said, higher education, you have better coping skills. Estrogen stimulates the release of natural hormones. Exercise, which you said protects your brain and is a protective factor. Antioxidants, vitamin E, B, C. We've all heard of ginkgo biloba, and if people want to know whether, they ask me, should we take ginkgo biloba, is that good for you? We don't know. I mean, there's a big problem, big research going on, and we haven't got the results whether they are good or not. Red wine is good, cholesterol lowering drugs, good diet, social support, network, and spirituality. To be able to believe in a higher something, be able to do something, with yourself. What are the treatments? Since 1998, 100 different drugs have been tested. Only 4 have been approved. Even lately, like last month, we were doing research on 3 or 4 different molecules, and they withdrew it because nothing is working now. So that's a depressing story. Nothing is working at the present time. So what we have to do is prevention. Rather than curing, it's not, at the moment it's not a curative disease, but it is a preventable disease. We have to live well, good exercise, good diet, good living, spirituality, all that will help you to maintain your brain. You have to maintain the brain as much as you can. And the last application which was approved was in 2003, and now it's coming almost 20 years now since that was approved. Nothing is done. Nothing. So as I said, dementia is both cognitive loss as well as non-cognitive. You have psychiatric and behavioral problems, as well as you have agitation, wandering, vocalization, aggressive, all those things. You have physically non-aggressive behavior. You can have physically aggressive behavior, the people hit you, and in nursing homes they get on and kill each other also. And then the staff go on sick leave because they hit the person, they spit on the person, they scratch the person. And unless the staff is trained, they get hurt. You have verbally non-aggressive behavior, they can scream and shout, it doesn't really bother you, so it's okay. And they constantly complain, and the families also constantly complain. And then you have verbally aggressive, where they can scream and shout, and we had a patient who would constantly tap, 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 non-stop. And then the staff gets upset as well as the other patients get upset, What are the strategies for behavior? If somebody is very restless, you have to distract them, calm them down. Repeated actions, if behavior does not bother you, don't do anything. Become suspicious, do not argue with them. You will not win, you will never win. And don't take any accusations personally. It's nothing to do with it's that disease talking. And the best practice in that is to keep the person in a modality, give a supportive environment, and pharmacology. We don't know what is what, but everything together helps. I'm not saying that you can't give medication. Sometimes you have to give medication to keep them calm down. And you can't give them all the time, otherwise they become a zombie. Okay, I don't think that's important. Yeah, different types of non-drug medication that you don't. Music, art, reminiscence. Sometimes you play tapes of old family affairs, you play old music, so that sometimes when you have a wedding in the family and our patient cannot go, we tell them to bring a tape of the whole event and we play it for them so that they feel that they've been part of the thing. Sometimes our patients don't go to sleep and they become very resistant. We have to ask the family to phone, because when they hear a familiar voice, however much the nursing staff will do things with them, they cannot really relate as much as to the family. Movement, exercise, touch therapy is also important, because we're living in a culture where we feel we can't touch people. In schools, you're not allowed to touch, and we refrain from that. But touch is good because touch gives you the human contact, and if you don't have that human contact, you feel very isolated. So that touch is good. There was a time when we used to give cigarettes in hospitals. Smoking was allowed. There was no restriction to smoking. Now you can't smoke in hospital. You have to go outside to smoke. And the nurses would never touch people. So the only time they would touch is when the people either misbehaved, they became incontinent, so they had to go and touch them to change their diapers, or they would come and stand up to get their cigarettes. So when they came, they had to touch them to give them the cigarettes and to light the cigarettes. So that was the only time they would be touched. And that is bad. We need touch therapy. Now we have that. We have touch therapy, we have pet therapy, we have laughter therapy, we have all sorts of therapies. And the more you have these things, as in daycares, people live longer. The people have the quality of life is improved. When I started working, they would ask me how much longer, how much longer. We couldn't say. We would say 4 years, 5 years. Now we cannot say that because with all these daycare systems, all the other support systems, people can easily live for 20 years with good support systems. But there has to be good support system both for the caregiver as well as for the patient. Because if the caregiver is not supported and the caregiver burns out, they will be placed in the nursing home much faster than if they were not placed. Okay. I don't think you need to know that. Communication is also important. As the people get more and more demented, they cannot communicate. There's no communication. So you have to guess what the person is saying by their actions or by their movements. We used to have patients with a wheelchair and they'd be agitated, turning around. So why were they doing that? Because they were wet. Either they were sitting in their feces or they were sitting in their urine and the staff wouldn't know what was happening. So if you change that, if you pay attention to their body movements, if you pay attention to that, many of the aggressive behaviors will be in less. And I will just tell you about the stress. Okay, the caregivers, as we say, are informal, formal paid caregivers, and who are the ones who give care? But how do you manage your stress? Caregiving tasks are what? Shopping for the person, preparing meals, providing transportation, managing their finances, managing their legal things, and that also they become suspicious, bathing them, dressing them, feeding them, helping the person use their toilets, taking them to the toilet, making arrangements for medical care, paid home assistance, managing behavior symptoms, and given the pressures of caregivers have a higher rate of depression. They have a higher rate of falling sick. So their medical expenses become much more than when they are not. High levels of stress hormones. And you see somebody who's been constantly looking after another person with high stress level, when that stress is gone, and you find that person looking haggard, they don't even look after themselves, they don't care for themselves. And so when that stress is gone, somehow or the other come back to life a little bit. And they become much more livelier, they start beginning to take care of themselves. And the caregiving is also a very phenomenon which is, you have to know, if the relationship between the person with dementia and the caregiver was a good one to start with, they had a good, happy relationship, you will give care willingly, you will give care lovingly. But if the relationship from the beginning was stressed, it was not a good relationship, then you feel it a chore to do it. You will not do it from your heart. Okay, the stress can be physical stress, it can be a mental stress, it can be an emotional stress, and it can be a behavioral stress. You have different types of stress. So how are you going to stress is what you deny that no, everything is fine, I don't need any help. Or you get very angry, you will start abusing your person you're looking after because you get so angry you sometimes hit the person. You get depressed, you get exhausted, there's sleeplessness because if the person wakes you up every half an hour to either go to the bathroom or want to leave the room or whatever, you can't sleep. There's emotional lability, lack of concentration, and you have health problems. How do we manage the stress? You have to learn about the disease, be realistic about the disease. Don't expect the person to do things which they cannot do. Be realistic about yourself. Don't think that you can do everything. women, we tend to take a lot upon ourselves and we think that, oh, yes, I can handle that. But we can't handle that. We have to accept help. Accept your feelings of anger, share your feelings with others, share your experiences, but be positive. Look for humor. Sometimes things do become quite funny. But also take care of yourself. Try to do some massage therapy for yourself. Try to go to the hairdresser for yourself. Try to do a manicure for yourself. Or outsource some of the activities in your house. Have a cleaner come in to do your house, In India, it's more easier to get a Ganga or somebody to come and clean the house. Over here, we have to get some home help. Yeah, this is all that. So, I would end by saying that getting old is natural. We all have to get old. There's no getting away. No amount of creams or whatever you put on your face, the wrinkles will come. And your vision will go, and your hearing will go, and all that things will happen. But feeling old is optional. You don't have to feel old and say that, oh, I can't do this, oh, I'm so old, I can't think. That's not correct. So, getting old is natural, but feeling old is optional. You have to remember that. Okay? So that's it.
Yeah, please raise your hands if you have a question so I can bring the mic over and use the mic for the question.
Yes, Professor, what is your name, you said?
Dolly.
Professor, you thoroughly enjoyed the talk. I wish you hadn't given us the 10 warnings. I'm beginning to feel I have experience in all those 10 warnings. But I do have a question. And it's about an 85-year-old guy. I just heard about it a couple of weeks back. I empathize with him because I'm 85, and I want to know what is it all about. This old man is going in his car, and he takes this.
Is this a joke?
No, it happened a couple of weeks back in California. His name is Herbie, and of course he goes on the Pacific Coast Highway every single day. He goes on the Pacific Coast Highway every single day. 85-year-old Herbie. And I said, I do empathize with him because, hey, that's my age, And all of a sudden his cell phone rings. So he picks up the phone and it's his wife, Esther. He said, Esther, what's the matter, He says, Herbie, I know you take this road every single day, but I just heard on the radio that there's some crazy guy going in the wrong direction. So Herbie says, Esther, not just one guy, there are hundreds of them. Now, is that Alzheimer's, is it dementia, or is it old age?
No, it's not normal to drive in the wrong direction. No.
So I shouldn't worry if I started doing that,
No, you shouldn't be doing that.
Okay, all right.
Keep it on, just don't turn the mic on.
Hello? Hello? Hi, Dolly, I read all sorts of headlines about them doing strange things with mouses' brains and regenerating brain cells in the brain. So can't we just get some mad scientists, like about 100 of them, to do a whole bunch of experiments doing this and give you an injection of your own DNA engineered brain cells and do something? And we have the right to try now when we're getting into
Find those 100 guys and we'll try to do it. Who would want to do it?
I would do it if there was no other choice, and you said there was no other choice. So what is on the frontier of doing this?
There's lots of things on the frontier. I don't know what's happening in the next 50 years. As I said, 10 years ago,
50 years, just like 5.
Something which happened, things which are happening now never happened 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Science is progressing so rapidly and things are happening so much. I don't know what's going to happen in the next few years. What are they going to find? They're going to try to make us live longer, and those are things that are happening in mice. It's still in the mice stage. It's not translated to human beings. So, okay. No. Yes, sir.
One question.
Is it true that loneliness can cause dementia?
I got it.
Hi, Dolly.
Can loneliness cause dementia?
Yes, loneliness may not cause dementia, but loneliness may cause depression. And depression, if it is not controlled, if it is not treated, can lead to memory loss. And it mimics dementia. It's not really, the brain cells are not lost, but it mimics, you behave as if you are a demented person. And that loneliness is a very big thing.
I don't need
Loneliness, because now we even have a ministry of loneliness in the United Kingdom.
One of the things you mentioned was difficulty swallowing. Is it physical or neurological?
Physical and neurological are
You
connected.
said that difficulty swallowing
Yes.
was one of the symptoms
Yes,
for
yes.
dementia or something like that.
No, it's a symptom of dementia because you cannot, as the brain, the swallowing, breathing, all that is from the back of your brain.
Okay, so the brain is
Brain
not
is affected.
performing the function,
Yes,
it's not
yes,
physical.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you very much.
You have-
Oh, one more thing. You, in your biography, there is the tests that you have. I went to your site, and is that test, can that be self-administered, or do you need a psychologist to do it?
Yeah. Psychologist, a nurse, whoever is trained in it.
Okay. And how accurate are they?
Very accurate.
Good show. Okay.
Now he's having problems with the language. Is it some?
Yes.
Over here.
Thanks for the lecture. I have a question.
Okay. My question is really more about how do you get routinely tested for your brain health?
I'm sorry?
How do you get your brain health tested routinely? We hear about annual physical exams. We all go for.
I think I should.
How do you get your brain health exam?
I was asking, how we go find an physical exam. We're encouraged to that. Is there something equivalent for your brain health?
Yes. I mean, I don't know about here, but in Montreal we have lots of memory clinics. So you can go to the memory clinic, be referred to a memory clinic where they do a brain scan, or do a CT scan, or they give you a memory test to see how well you're functioning. And sometimes we do that every 6 months, or every year, or every 2 years, so to see the progression, if there is any progression.
At what age do you recommend starting that?
I think when you have a loss of memory, and sometimes we go to the doctor, and the family takes you to the doctor. No, there's nothing wrong. It's normal, But you are the best judge. You know how your functioning was when you were 10 years ago, 5 years ago. And if you feel that something is wrong, then there's something wrong. So the doctors, unfortunately, the GPs are not very up to date in diagnosing. So you have to go to specialized clinics.
But is there a benefit point for the test?
Yes, because if you find out that there is a problem, there's a beginning of dementia, you can become more prepared. You can make your plans for the future. You can do your financials in order. You can have your property, or you have your finance, whatever, but you can make some plans for it. You can make your will. You can do things for you. If you don't know and you just keep in the dark, nothing's going to happen. Yes?
I have a friend, she was told that she has Alzheimer, but she no way is she any worse than I am. So I always wonder why tell someone she gets depressed and which judgment, then what is the difference? I forget just as much as she does.
But if the doctor makes the wrong diagnosis,
yeah, right in her.
Yeah, but I mean, if she's not progressing, because by definition, the Alzheimer's disease is a progressive disease. So over the years, it has to go worse and worse. But if there's no progression, there's no.
I don't understand quite.
No. Hi.
What is your opinion of anti-inflammatory agents, either natural or pharmaceutical?
Yeah, anti-inflammatory agents are helpful because there have been experiments done when there were twins. And one was had arthritis and was taking anti-inflammatory and the other one was not. And the one who was taking it did not develop dementia, the other one did develop dementia. So anti-inflammatory does help in the brain. Because the brain function has also become inflamed.
Now, what is the difference between frontal lobe dementia or a old grouchy person like me saying, therefore I just don't care about it?
No. I mean, there is a difference because the frontal lobe dementia is really a damage in your frontal lobes.
So how do you differentiate between them?
Your family will differentiate. Okay? Just question. Anything else?
Just go back at it.
What is the differentiating symptom signs between dementia, early dementia, and Alzheimer's? What exactly will differentiate within first 3 years somebody has progressive dementia? Will it ever get into the stage of Alzheimer's? How would you differentiate?
You are mixing up the two things. You know?
Yes.
Early dementia, early onset dementia is there when it happens when you're younger. It starts at the age of maybe 50 or 60 and it progresses pretty fast. Okay. Early onset dementia progresses much faster than a late onset dementia, which may start in the 60s or 70s or 80s.
So one can jump from dementia into the Alzheimer?
But dementia is an overall term. You can't jump
different diagnoses.
Everybody, Alzheimer's is dementia, Alzheimer's is a dementia, Pick's is a dementia, everything is a dementia. You have fever and you may have fever from typhoid, or you may have fever from malaria, you may have fever from flu.
You say 16 different kinds of dementia. So
these are all dementias, but the common factor in all of them is memory loss. Is that clear?
Yeah.
No.
Fine. Thank you.
From various sources, I've picked up on some of the exercises that you can do, mental exercises, like counting backwards from 100, and then I challenge myself from 500 backwards, and also backward, reciting your alphabet backward, okay? And then I make up my own games. However, do you know of any one source from which we can learn about these mental exercises that we can keep up with?
There are lots of YouTube programs or on the internet. You see lots of these brain games, the brain teasers. Pick up anyone you want. I don't know any particular one.
One source you don't.
There are lots and lots of them.
Thank you.
Aricept is not a cure. Aricept is not a cure for it. It will help the
Yes, it helps and slows down the disease, but eventually it will happen. Yeah, but if it was going to go down in say 2 years, it may take 5 years. So it gives you a little relief. It gives you a little relief, you know, it's not a cure. There is no cure at the moment. There's no cure. As I said, it's not a curative disease, it's a preventable, you have to protect yourself.
Okay, I think
He wants to ask something.
we have one more.
Dolly, I'm wondering, back when there was a Zoroaster, when he lived, do you think people have dementia the same way?
Understand Ms. Fuller.
Back in Zoroaster's time, do you think that people have dementia the same way? I mean, you've been studying it for 30 some decades and decades, so what do you think about something like that?
I don't think it's a new disease, something new happening. But we read about it more, we know about it more, there's more research being done about it. I'm sure there were people even 5,000 years ago who were behaving oddly. I don't know what happened 5,000 years ago. Yeah? Age-related people didn't live as long as before, as much as we live now. And if the brain cells deteriorate as we grow older, and if we died at 30 or 40, maybe we didn't know what happened then. I don't know. I cannot answer that question. Maybe I'll find out the next time I come. I'm sorry?
What do you think? I know you can't answer it definitively.
What I think, what I say is that it is not something which happened suddenly now. It must be there before. I mean, people in Greek time, they used to talk about this. In the Bible also, they talk about the 120 years, and after that, they talk in the Greek Torah, they talk about 120 years. So after that, something must be happening. I don't know. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you, darling. Really appreciate it. We have a Mr. Award to formally thank you.
Thank you so much on behalf of WZCC and NY for coming all the way here. I love your talk.